Welcome to Tuesday's edition of COVID-19. The daily tally stands below 500 today amid calls for greater public containment efforts. Meanwhile, there's been a breath of fresh air on the regional diplomatic front as officials seek face-to-face interactions to push forward security agendas. We have details later on in the program. We start now with the pandemic updates with our Kwon Soa. Now, Soa, do start us off then for this Tuesday.
Sunny, for the second straight day, Korea's daily tally is in the high 400s with 478 infections reported as of 12 a.m. That's 5 more than on Monday, but it's 11 more domestic cases compared to Monday, as we're seeing a slight drop in imported infections. And with that, Korea's total caseload has surpassed 106,000 and the death toll stands at 1,752. So taking a look at the daily developments, so we are seeing that 500s are outnumbering 400s right now.
Right, and that trend, Soa, has pushed the daily average in the past week to over a worrying threshold, I hear.
That's right, Sunny. The average in domestically transmitted cases has hit the 500 mark. And if we take into consideration that early in the week we have usually fewer cases due to fewer tests over the weekend, this number could rise in the coming days. Now, what also has been on the rise is the proportion of infections outside the metropolitan region. This Tuesday, that was at almost 41%. So for a closer look, we have here many regions that are red, which means that have at least double-digit figures here, like Busan and also in Jeollabuk-do province here. So with no change in the capital region, with Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province still in the triple digits, this is raising concerns also, which Prime Minister Jung Se-kyun has addressed at a briefing earlier today. Let's take a listen.
I clearly remember how last year people were scared off just by the sound of sneezing and canceling meetups when there were more than 100 daily infections. It's concerning to see how people have become desensitized, even with daily caseloads in the 300s and 400s.
So cluster infections spread across the nation remains a concern, and diminished vigilance won't help in the country's efforts to achieve herd immunity by the end of this year. Vaccination for right now, the process we're seeing here, less than 1 million people have so far received at least one shot of the vaccination. And despite vaccination progressing around the world, there are many countries still seeing resurgences. Let's take a look here. Brazil has hit the 13 million mark in total infections. And the Czech Republic here is also seeing resurgences, having surpassed South Africa in total caseload. And let's take a closer look at the severest spots around the world. Here, the U.S. with over 70,000 infections. Although here, this country is having a faster vaccination process than earlier expected, variant cases and also a high percentage of younger generations with the COVID-19 infection. That's a concern there. And India here, almost a 6-digit figure of daily infections. And Iran also is seeing resurgences with almost 14,000 cases reported in the past day, with Iran's health minister saying that some cities are expecting one of the most terrible resurgences. And in total, the world now has over 132.4 million infections. And those are the updates I have for now, but I'll see you in a bit after the government briefing. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, so thank you. I'll see you back at the desk. Right, now for more coverage of the pandemic here on the local front, I have Kim Sung-yeon in the studio with me. Welcome, Sung-yeon.
Good afternoon, Sunny.
Right, then let's start with the latest findings by the country's investigative panel on adverse vaccine responses, Sung-yeon.
Right, Sunny, the panel did have their latest meeting that was held on last Friday, which was April 2nd. Now, this was the fifth meeting of its kind by Korea's post-vaccination investigation task force, probing the deaths and side effects following coronavirus vaccinations. Now, during Monday's afternoon government briefing, Dr. Seo Eun-suk, who is a member of the task force, announced the results of of their latest meeting. And in regards to post-inoculation deaths, Dr. Seo said that in the case of 5 fatalities that they looked into, all of them were likely caused by factors aside from the vaccine. She said their probe found no correlation between the COVID-19 vaccine and the deaths that they studied, noting that they were all patients with pre-existing health conditions such as liver and heart diseases. She also added that the panel will reconvene after looking into the results of 3 more autopsies that are currently underway. Regarding the serious side effects that have been reported so far, Dr. Seo said it was difficult to establish a general link between the adverse reactions and the vaccines. The panel did acknowledge, however, that one of the 3 suspected cases of anaphylaxis they looked into recently did have causal associations with the vaccine. Now, in the meantime, as of midnight today, 144 new adverse reactions have been reported post-inoculation, including 4 new deaths and 3 serious side effects, but no new case of anaphylaxis was reported.
I see. Meanwhile, I believe authorities here are looking to revamp their COVID-19 prevention guidelines amid concerns of a possible 4th wave.
Right, Sunny. The country has been witnessing sporadic cluster infections throughout the nation. Indeed, in various locations we're talking about. On Monday, President Moon Jae-in thus called on the public to remain vigilant and warned of stiff measures as well against those who violate prevention rules and undermine the country's containment efforts. Now, this coming Friday, Korea plans to announce new social distancing guidelines that will kick into effect starting next Monday. Authorities are saying that the country may have to go with tougher rules if there is no significant let-up in the daily caseloads, warning that the figure may jump to above 1,000 if the current situation drags on.
If we don't strengthen our preventive measures, the outbreak may escalate to the point where it triggers a 4th wave of infections here in the country.
There's also some serious concern over the situation in Busan, Korea's 2nd largest city on the southeastern coast, which is struggling to cope with a surge in new infections linked to nightlife venues. Nearly 300 employees, customers, and others at these establishments have tested positive for COVID-19 late last month. Experts say the outbreak may have been fueled by the city's lifting of operating hour restrictions on bars, singing rooms, and other venues on March 15th.
One final question before you go, Song-yeon. I believe Korea has recorded its first community transmission of the South African variant.
Right, Sunny, that's correct. The announcement was made on Monday by health authorities, and it said that Korea has identified its first community spread of the more contagious South African COVID-19 variant. Now, with 41 new variant cases confirmed, which include the South African, UK, and Brazilian variants, the total number now stands at 330 for Korea. As of Monday, of the 41 new variant cases, 26 were local residents and 15 were foreigners. Among them, 22 were infections in the community, more than the total number of imported cases.
5 cases related to a workplace and a household in Seoul's Gangseogu district were confirmed to be infected with the South African variant, which marks the first community spread of that variant reported here in Korea.
Commissioner Jung Eun-kyung also added that daily caseloads could top the 500 mark sometime later this week. She said the basic reproduction number of the virus had exceeded 1 last week, standing at 1.07 to the concern of health authorities. A reproduction number of over 1 suggests that the disease is expanding in new population groups at an increasing rate, while a reproduction number of less than 1 means the spread is declining.
All right, Song-yeon, as always, thank you very much for the coverage. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Right, up next, we are poised to join the regular briefing on the COVID-19 situation here on the local front for this Tuesday. Now, authorities have reiterated calls for COVID-19 testings among those who believe they may have been exposed to the virus as part of efforts to stem cluster infections. Also, failure to abide by entry logs at dining and drinking establishments can result in fines of up to 100,000 won for patrons and 3 million won for owners. Similarly, those who violate the no eating guideline are poised to face fines of 100,000 won. Remember, the consumption of food and beverages is only allowed at places of dining and drinking. The briefing is about to start. We'll come back to you afterwards.
Mr. Lee Sang-won will give you the daily briefing. I will start the COVID-19 daily briefing of April 6th. As of midnight, April 6th, we have 460 new local infection cases and 18 imported cases. The total number of caseload is 106,230. Number of tests conducted altogether is 89,731. And at the triage centers in metropolitan area, we had 37,261 cases conducted, and confirmed cases are 45. 463 people were released from quarantine newly, and at the moment, the people under quarantine is 7,115. People in critical or severe condition are 112, and we saw new fatalities of 4. We extend our deepest condolences to the deceased and their families. As of yesterday, the individual cases, we are going to give out the press release later. Today, we have seen cluster infections by workplaces, and I would like to give you an explanation on this. This year, at workplaces, we have seen 161 cases, and we saw more than 3,000 people infected due to cluster infections. This means average infection cases were 21 to 26 by workplaces. The trend looks like this. From January, we saw 884. In Feb, we saw more than 60 cases. In March, more than 60 cases, and we are seeing that we have seen more increase as time goes by. And we have seen a lot of infections in the manufacturing domain, accounting for 37% of the total infections at workplaces, and this is spread into other industries as well. Leading case in point is in Chungbuk area at the facilities of food processing, and also a similar factory has seen more infection cases. In Namyangju, a plastic factory, we've seen more than 200 cases. In Gwangjin-gu restaurant, we saw 82 cases. In Gyeonggi-do Gwangju, at an apparel facilities, we've seen cases, especially the food processing industry saw a lot more infection cases. Therefore, we ask for more vigilance. Most of these people related to these cases were working directly at these factories, and they passed on the virus to their families and friends. The major danger factor is because that they carried on working at the facilities even after they were contracted, and ventilation was poor at the workplace. And also they used the multi-use facilities together, and also they failed to strictly abide by the guidelines. So the employer and the employees at such facilities, we urge you to train the staffers on the guidelines and also strictly abide by the social distancing measures and guidelines, such as wearing masks. And if you are experiencing any symptoms, you should directly go to the testing sites. On the vaccination side, as of midnight, April 6th, we have 35,970 who got their first vaccinations, and this makes a total of 999,870. And number of persons inoculated with the second dose is 316, making 27,691 that are fully vaccinated. We have more than 330,000 who got their vaccinations out of the people who are the target of the vaccinations in the first quarter, making this 5.8% of the vaccination rate. And of the general public, including more than 75 years of age, we have done the vaccinations on 680,000 people. And from March onwards, we are vaccinating the people in nursing facilities, and we are seeing more than 57% inoculated in these nursing facilities. And we have done the first inoculations to 754,000 people, making the vaccination rate to 85%. In the nursing hospitals, we have done 180,000 and more. And in hospitals, we have inoculated more than 340,000 medical workers. For the hospitals, who with the second vaccinations, we have inoculated more than 60,000, and the adverse reactions were reported. The total number reported is 11,141, and most cases of 10,976 experienced mild symptoms such as headache and fever, and 109 were suspect cases of anaphylaxis. And we have 20 of them who are in serious conditions such as convulsion, and we have 3 new cases reported of these serious cases. And we are going to announce the newly opened the vaccination centers in the regions. We have opened 22 more who are inoculating Pfizer vaccines. So altogether, there are 72 vaccine centers. So yesterday, the investigative panel, they have shipped to these centers the new doses of vaccines. And the investigative panel and the promotion panel for vaccinations, they are carrying on with the delivery of these doses and continuously opening new centers for vaccinations. The status quo may vary by municipalities. And those of you who are over 75 years of age, please make sure to check the notification from your local offices on vaccinations. And if you are eligible for vaccinations, however, you were not notified as of yet, please wait and do not worry until you get the notification from your offices, district offices. For the last 1 year, the whole globe is fighting against this virus, and the pandemic is on the rise. The OECD countries, the pandemic situation there, compared to that, the situation in Korea is quite stable. However, this does not mean that we are looking at a positive front. Last month, we have seen the infection cases staying in the 400s, and now it is up to 500s, and this shows a hint that it may be increasing into even more bigger infections. And what is worrying is that we are seeing more and more infections, especially the cluster infections. So it is very difficult to pinpoint to any specific areas. And the factor that is feeding this infection is not something new. It's the normal livelihoods that are carried on, but still we have a lot of contacts with infections. So It is, of course, a very difficult condition. However, we have to really keep in mind that we have to stay vigilant and you have to stay away from unnecessary meetings and make sure to wear your face masks. And most of all, if you are showing any symptoms, please immediately halt using multi-use facilities and go to the test centers. We've reiterated a lot of times the symptoms of COVID-19 is not something new. Any respiratory syndrome such as cough or sore throat, if you have experiencing respiratory syndromes, please go straight ahead to the testing centers. Especially if you are tested, please refrain from entering multi-use facilities or going to work until you get the test results. This is a situation that we are all enduring together and enduring something intolerable. However, we should keep on doing this. And as one of the members of the authorities of this preventive headquarters, I would like to apologize for the inconveniences. However, we have this high level of civic spirit, so we should keep within the guidelines for the sake of other people and your loved ones. We would like to thank all of you for the cooperation and collaboration, and we are going to do our best to complete and finish this COVID-19 situation.
Right, there was Lee Sang-won with Tuesday's afternoon briefing, so he went into quite detail about the importance of preemptive testing.
Yes, that he did because the situation in the country seems to be worsening. He said that although Korea, out of the OECD countries compared to other countries, is not seeing such a serious situation, but he did not rule out a steady rise in the infection. So as you said, preemptive testing is important. And what he also stressed is that there were high risks at workplaces. In this year we had 161 cluster infections linked to workplaces, and that's 3,462 individual cases in total. So around 21 to 24 patients per cluster at such workplaces. And if we break it down by month, in January we had over 840 of such cases, but in February and March over 1,400 and 1,200 respectively. So we are seeing a rise there, and especially high risks were found at meat processing factories due to the working environment, meaning poor ventilation and people sharing dormitories as well. Also, some people continued to work at those places after showing symptoms or even went to public use facilities. So that's one place where we should be extra careful. And a quick update on vaccination centers in the country. He said that 22 new virus centers have been set up for the Pfizer vaccination, and in total that's now over 70 centers.
I see. Well, that's good to know. All right, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Right now, Korea's floral industry has been hard hit by the pandemic amid the cancellation of various social events over the past 1 year. Well, in a bid to ease the burden faced by flower producers and sellers, a campaign has been launched by a district office here in capital Seoul. Do take a look.
So spring is here. That means beautiful flowers are blooming in earnest across the country, as you can find here at the Yangjae Flower Market, which is the largest flower market in South Korea. However, the nation's flower industry has suffered a big loss because of the pandemic. Let's listen to what florists have to say.
코로나 전후로는 굉장히 많은 변화가 있어서 비교가 안 될 정도로 매출이 감소했습니다.
코로나는 정말 상상도 못했던 바닥을 치는 시기였고요. 지금은 그래도 좀 봄 정취를 느끼고 싶어서 찾아오시는 분들이 계시기는 한데 조금 저하시는 것 같아요. 좀 걱정도 많이 하시고.
많은 행사가 다 중단돼 버려가지고 꽃 수요가 지금 60%에서 한 70% 정도 지금 평상시보다 빠진 상태예요.
As just said, the nation's flower industry has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. And to provide help, public institutions and companies came up with a great campaign. So I'm at the Dongjak-gu district office in Seoul. As you just watched, the nation's flower industry is experiencing extreme difficulties. And to help them out, local district officers came up with a special relay campaign. And I have a local officer right next to me, and I'm going to ask her what the campaign is like. 화훼 농가를 돕기 위해서 특별한 프로젝트를 기획하셨다고 들었는데 간단하게 설명 좀 부탁드릴게요.
코로나19 장기화로 화훼 판매 업계가 어려움을 겪고 있어서 저희 구에서 부서별 원 테이블 원 플라워 릴레이를 실시하고 있습니다.
With district officers, I visited a nearby flower shop to get some flowers for the relay campaign.
사장님, 요즘 어떤 꽃이 제일 예뻐요?
네, 요새는 저 후리지아 다 이런 거거든요. 튤립도 있고 장미도 있고.
The campaign has been carried out since last year. It is not just the Dongjak-gu district office, but also other public institutions and private companies that are participating in the campaign. And now some 73 flower shops are taking part in this campaign, and that is up 25 from last year. The flowers that the Dongjak Economic Promotion Division bought today cost about 100,000 Korean won, or around $88. And this department is the one that first came up with the relay campaign.
이 사무실이라는 공간이 원래 꽃이 그렇게 많은 공간이 아닌데 1테이블 1플라워 하면서 꽃이 많아졌잖아요. 기분이 좀 어떠세요?
개인적으로는 아무래도 사무실에서도 봄을 느낄 수 있어서 좋고 또 화훼업계가 요즘 코로나 때문에 힘들잖아요. 그래서 도움이 될 수 있는 것 같아서 뿌듯하고 기분 좋은 것 같아요.
With a short message that supports the campaign and the flower industry attached, the flowers bought just earlier are placed on tables in the office.
우리가 한 부서에서 한 꽃집을 지원하는 게 사실 그렇게 매출에 많은 도움이 되지는 않지만 우리 직원들도 꽃을 보면서 힐링을 하고 화훼업소도 새 힘을 가지고 다시 재기할 수 있는 그런 동기부여가 됐다고 생각합니다.
Other than this one table, one flower campaign by Seoul City, a number of various campaigns by other cities and districts are being carried out even at this moment to support the flower industry.
Yes, so we are enjoying some spring warmth, but even at this moment, those in the flower industry are still struggling. Today, I visited some flower markets in a park, and beautiful blossoms are everywhere, and see how much power it has to elevate your emotions. So why don't you get yourself some flowers, not only for yourself, but also for those in the industry. This has been 신새벽.
한미일은 북핵 문제의 시급성과 외교적 해결의 필요성에 대해 공감했고 북미 협상의 조기 재개를 위한 노력이 계속되어야 한다는 데 대해서 뜻을 같이 했습니다.
认同韩方一起共同以对话的方式来推进半岛问题的政治性的进程。
프로세스가 실질적으로 진전해 나갈 수 있도록 중국 정부가 계속 건설적인 역할을 해주실 것을 요청드립니다.
There is fresh activity on the diplomatic front here in this part of the world amid a pandemic that had earlier kept cross-border interactions to a minimum. Now, for more on this, I have Professor Kim Hyun-wook at the Korean National Diplomatic Academy. Welcome, Professor Kim.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
And I also have Professor Im Eun-jung from Gwangju National University. Pleasure to see you again, Professor Im.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Right then. Professor Kim, just last week, Korea partook in trilateral security talks with the US and Japan while holding diplomatic talks with China. What is your assessment of these latest exchanges?
I think those two meetings had a very similar agenda altogether. The trilateral meeting dealt with North Korea issues and also the regional issues, for example, how three countries can cooperate for the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy in Asia, and also the supply chain issues, global supply chains, how those three countries can be more cooperative in forming a global supply chain on key materials, which possibly excludes China. And in the foreign ministerial meeting with China, three issues have been pretty much dealt with. I mean, but the nuances were different. In the South Korea-China foreign minister meeting, North Korea issue was focused, but the nuance was more focused on dialogue and peace process, and also global supply chain issue. China asked South Korea to cooperate more on the side of China. So these two meetings were held together, but they show some different, policy platforms and pathways originating from the U.S. and China separately.
Right. I mean, well, Professor Im, some pundits claim last week's meetings hosted by the US and China respectively are perhaps aimed at prodding Korea to pick a side amid the extended standoff between Washington and Beijing. Do you agree, Professor Im?
Well, I still want to remain optimistic as much as I can. Of course, the situation is not easy. Any country is struggling with fighting against the coronavirus and the global supply chain. All this economic-related issues are also very challenging. And the two superpowers, China and the United States, are obviously competing. So our position is, of course, is not that in an easy, comfortable position. But still, I do think a series of events we have observed over the last couple of weeks that reconfirmed the importance or strategic importance of South Korea, not only just geographically, but also just for economic reasons. But for example, South Korea is the largest producer of the semiconductor, which is an indispensable one for any fourth industrial revolution related business. So economically too, I mean, our position is important, and politically as well, ideologically as well. This is a liberal democracy, so we do share many values and norms with the other those liberal democracies in the world. So having said that, I would say the series of meetings just reconfirmed us, the South Korea, as an important country.
Right. And staying on the peninsula, Professor Kim, what is your outlook on the Biden administration's future policy on North Korea?
I think it will be announced sometime within this month, so we are not sure. But based upon what has been talked and pronounced and mentioned by the U.S. government officials, maybe we can guess what would be about. In the trilateral meeting, they focused on the concerns about the North Korean ICBM and nuclear programs, and also emphasized the UN Security Council resolutions sanctions. I didn't say sanctions, but I would say sanctions. And also they focused deterrence measures vis-a-vis North Korea. So I think based upon sanctions, they might try to open a dialogue with North Korea, but it will be more focused on the working level talk rather than top-down approach, which has been the case of Trump government. So I think many times Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken, they have been immersed in the negotiation with Iran on nuclear issues. So they want to adopt partly the Iran case to North Korea case, which means that I think working level talk has been very detailed, and also sanctions is something they can give to North Korea rather than something that is requested by North Korea, like stopping joint military exercises or stopping the anti-North Korea policies, which is something that weakens the U.S.-South Korea alliance. And maybe lastly, verification issue is something very important. Inspectors might go into North Korea to check out what has been achieved in North Korea related to denuclearization, which is a question to North Korea, whether North Korea can really accept the verification and inspections. That's, I think, the key issue in dealing with North Korea.
Right. And against that backdrop, Professor Im, China, for its part, has been actively promoting vaccine diplomacy. Now, how does this man of diplomacy look to affect Seoul's ties with Beijing?
Well, these days, the many countries, very unfortunately, many countries show some kind of very defensive attitude against the so-called vaccine nationalism. Amid this, vaccine nationalism, China or even India, some other countries also try to use vaccine as a kind of one good diplomatic tool to promote their, for example, their public health management style or their kind of countermeasures against the coronavirus. But at the same time, during that meeting, again, with the Korean foreign minister, whose name is Chung Eui-yong, they also, it looks like they also had a pretty good discussion about the vaccine issues and the so-called vaccine passport. It looks like China was trying to just encourage South Korea to share that kind of information for the traveler who have to travel between the two countries. But it looks like our government, South Korean government, is a little hesitant or a little cautious about sharing that kind of information because of probably all this privacy issue. All these informations are private information. So unless we can have a really trustable system between any country, actually, it might be a little controversial to share that kind of personal information. So, we'll see. And obviously, public health related issue is the most challenging issue for any countries these days. And China is the largest trading partner of South Korea. So we definitely need to cooperate to fight against the virus, and at the same time to cooperate for economic reasons too.
Right, and speaking about cooperation, Professor Kim, Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga will be the first foreign leader to visit the White House next week for talks with his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden. What are the implications of this upcoming interaction on a regional scale, Professor Kim?
As we all know, Japan is a very important partner to the United States. In Indo-Pacific strategy, Japan is a very pivotal country to the United States and also important country in Quad. Quad, the concept of Quad has been initiated by Japanese government first, which has been adopted by the United States. The Quad cooperation began with the tsunami situation. So I think, Japan-U.S. relationship is the most important relationship now for the United States, I would say. So I think mainly the issue will be about regional policies, how the Indo-Pacific strategy, cooperation would be possible by two countries' cooperation. I think China policies and things like that would be some center agenda, I think. So I think from the Korea's perspective, important agenda we have to look at is what kind of outcome will come out related to the Japan-Korea relations, because now the President Moon Jae-in expressed his willingness to restore the relationship with Japan, but Japanese government is still unwilling to accept that proposal. Still requested that South Korea has to make some kinds of detailed measures to restore and revert the history issues like forced labor issue related Supreme Court decision, things like that. But I think the U.S. would like the relationship to be restored based upon some more common agenda. So that's something we have to look into. And also, what would they talk about the South Korea's position inside Quad? Would they actively, ask South Korea to come into Quad or still leave South Korea outside the Quad so they would not ruin the alliance relationship with South Korea? So those kinds of issues are something that's important.
Right, and against that backdrop, Professor Im, there is talk about a possible rendezvous between President Moon Jae-in and Mr. Biden, also this month, also in the White House. What are your thoughts on this?
Again, it's a difficult time, but I also want to have some hope. I mean, I personally, I hope, our president can meet person to person with the President Biden as soon as possible in Washington, because April is such an important month. As we all know, Washington is saying that, they're gonna share their review on the North Korea policies, and then they're going to have the summit with Japan. So, and we have many other probably important meetings as well. So April is so very important. So hopefully, if everything is just set up by somebody else, I hope, our president can visit again to Washington and can have really a dumb meeting with the President Biden to deliver our perspective, even though, of course, they are trying to understand. And also, I do think Washington policymakers do have a pretty good, deep knowledge, understandings about the South Korea's policies and perspective, but still this, person-to-person meeting will be pretty much different. So I want to be an optimistic about the possibility. Mm-hmm.
Right. Professor Kim, North Korea has announced that will not take part in the Tokyo Olympics this summer because of the pandemic. Now, South Korea's Unification Ministry has expressed regret as the announcement puts an end to hopes of using the Games to engage Pyongyang. What are your thoughts on this latest event, Professor Kim?
I don't think the Olympic Games is not anymore a usable card for South Korea. North Korea definitely expressed its unwillingness to participate in Tokyo. Maybe domestically, the foreign policy decision-making has been already made in North Korea to stick to China. Now the U.S.-China competition is becoming more and more severe. And also, it seems like Biden government's policy towards North Korea doesn't seem like, a happy one to North Korea. So maybe now China desperately needs North Korea because it needs a buffer state of North Korea buffer state to deal with the United States. And also, China needs to, mobilize its partners and friends countries on the side of China to deal with the United States. So, and also North Korea needs China because it's in desperate situation domestically and economically. So their mutual interest is pretty much, getting more and more mingled together. So maybe North Korea is now getting to the side of China and pretty much being antagonistic to the United States. But I think the scapegoat will be South Korea. I think, maybe North Korea will not cross the red line in its military provocation, because in that case, maybe China will also get mad at North Korea. So the low-level military provocation, something that is also critical, will be something that targets South Korea rather than the United States.
Right. And Professor Im, tensions between Washington and Beijing are posing a dilemma for many of their allies, including South Korea, of course. Now, having said that, what strategy do you advise for Seoul amid efforts to ensure stability on the Korean Peninsula in light of Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions?
I think we really need to be more confident with our own view. South Korea is, again, the trader. This is a trading country, one of the largest trading country in the world. China obviously is the largest trading partner and economically speaking, very, very important market to South Korean industry. And also China's role is very much important whenever we face North Korea related issue. I do think Washington has a deep understanding about this kind of, again, the reality. But at the same time, we also need to be, again, the more confident with explicitly saying our norms, our values, our priority. Again, that this is a liberal democracy, and that we do prioritize respect, freedom, human rights, democracy, and so on. So again, the South Korea is not a small country any longer. So I hope again we can be more confident with our own global position and what we have believed in, and we need to probably deliver it very, how would you say, very carefully and at the same time very effectively.
I see. All right, Professor Im, as always, thank you very much for your words, and Professor Kim, thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you very much.
Right, now we end this edition amid hopes for a quick resumption of active and broader diplomatic exchanges in the absence of the pandemic, of course, in the near future. Thank you for watching.